Along with extra time and lower instances of unpredictable weather, there are a variety of benefits that come with fall ESN application. Learn more at smartnitrogen.com.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. It is great to have everybody continue, whether you're listening on satellite, you're listening on the podcast, you're on the farm, you're in the barn, the ranch, the pasture, the field, wherever you are. It's great to have you. Continue to tell your friends, your neighbors, anybody that is interested in agriculture. And this audience continues to grow across Canada and the United States. There's really nothing else like this show anywhere in agricultural media, and it is great to have you. This is one of we do this show with a lot of pride and a lot of passion, and I love doing it on a daily basis. Today on the show, we're going to be joined by Tyler Schau of agmarket.net. We're going to find out his perspective. He's out of North Dakota, and agmarket.net does a tremendous job. Tyler's going to talk about some of the crops like wheat and canola and soybeans and canola. We're going to try to get a little bit inside the strategy in terms of what's in front of us, what's happening, what are some of the conditions, and what can you do about it when you're thinking about your 24 and I'm going to say 25 crop. Okay? There are some producers that have been providing me with some feedback. Listen, you keep on talking about the 23 crop that's left unsold, but what about those of us that are thinking about the 25 crop that's going to happen here probably like 6 months from now? And so I know Tyler's going to bring that up today. So we'll have some thoughts on that for many of you. How is the canola situation with China impacting growers on the prairies and in Western Canada, as well as canola growers in North Dakota? We'll hit on that as well with him. We've also got a product spotlight today with Courtney Welch of Canterra. They've got a new canola hybrid that is out that really covers a broad amount of acres across Western Canada. Courtney's going to chat about that. That's with Canterra Seeds. And then we're going to finish up today's show with Tyler McCann. He is the managing director at CAPI. You often hear him here on the show on the RealAg Issues panel. Well, Tyler's going to be here today to talk about carbon border adjustments. He presented last week to the House Ag Committee in Ottawa to give his perspective on what he thinks the impact or lack of impact may be for carbon border adjustments. I am in the concerned camp. I see carbon border adjustments being used as a weapon. And in theory, they make a lot of sense. In theory, they could really even the playing field. But I just, you put a powerful weapon in the wrong hands, and it gets used unduly, and all that happens, we have thickening trade borders in Canada and beyond, and that's not good for a trade-reliant country like Canada. But we'll see what Tyler has to say. I got a feeling that he does disagree with me. Like a little bit of debate on this show as well. Now, if you have any feedback on today's program, we'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the RealAg feedback line. Now, that number is 855-776-6147. Tell you what, I've had a day 3 of being in Calgary. I've been broadcasting this week from Calgary. And day 3 here, it's internal team meetings this week. And RealAg was, we have a remote team before remote work was cool. So when we started the company in 2008, and it's grown ever since, and all that growth is because the audience and you choosing Real Agriculture as one of your main information sources, and we greatly appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. As somebody that started this company, to have the size and scale of the audience that we do here today across Canada and the United States it does warm my heart, and I really do appreciate it. As the size of the team has grown, you don't run into your coworkers all the time. And of course, you're on Zoom calls and telephones and group chats and all that kind of stuff. But A little bit different than maybe, say, on the farm where you're running into your coworkers on a daily basis, those family members, those people that work for you. You kind of get to have, you see each other face to face. And I still think face to face contact is incredibly important. I think there's a lot of people that, say, oh, you can do it by a Zoom call. Yeah, remote distance relationships can work, but you still got to have that in person once in a while to really build that connection between people. Right. That's why, hey, you're farming in somewhere in Canada, the U.S. You've joined one of the local commodity, the state commodity boards, the provincial commodity boards. Maybe you've worked your way to the national organization. You know this in the fact that you've had some Zoom meetings, right? But once in a while, you do need to get together for a face-to-face board meeting, and you'll probably say, this has been really good, right? You meet, you have dinner. You have that maybe that social drink and the ability to kind of connect on that personal level that really ties people together emotionally around what you're trying to accomplish. And so that's what we've been doing here for the past few days. We had a leadership meeting on Monday, and then we've had kind of a content operations and strategy meeting here on the Tuesday and the Wednesday, and it has been awesome. It has been so fantastic, and it's a great reminder where it does apply to you, the audience, is when you finish harvest, and if you're in a livestock situation, you have these different times of the year as well, where you could say it's kind of the downtime. It's kind of that little bit of a little bit of a slow period. Now that period may not be very long. I know, the farming is an all-round business nowadays. It's not a 6 month of the year kind of thing. So I get that, but there are those times of the year where we can sort of like park the daily grind and really think about, what have we been doing? Did we meet our goals? Did we do what we said we were going to do? How did things work out? And where do we want to take this from here? And we have been doing that at Real Agriculture the past number of days. And, think about when you're going to do that with your farming operation. When does it fit to do that? Because it is time well spent. As a family unit, as a broader, all the team member component of that, there's lots of different ways to do it. But ask yourself the question, when's the last time that we did some strategic planning? That's what the Mind Your Farm Business podcast is about. We got some episodes coming up on strategic planning here in a little bit. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we got Tyler Schau. We're talking markets with agmarket.net right after this.
The Your Co-op Grow team are your local experts because we live here too. Our agronomic specialists stay up to date with the latest research and technology to help support your entire farm operation. Talk to our team for advice tailored to your farm's needs. We have recommendations to help you optimize your crop yield and quality while enhancing the health of your land. Co-op, we're all growing together. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
We're going to talk to Jack Legg, SGS's Business Development Manager. Let's talk about some of the testing that SGS Guelph does.
Yes, so at our facility, we're predominantly testing for nutrients. So soil testing for fertility to manage crop production. Same in the greenhouse world, but they're testing water and the soil as growing media. And then the livestock side of things, we're testing the feeds and forages and feed ingredients to optimize nutrition and maximize, or at least try to optimize growth and production for the farmer. But SGS also has many different labs in the network, so we can help out from an environmental standpoint. Maybe it's heavy metals testing or contaminants. We've got seed testing capabilities.
Congratulations on the 40-year anniversary of the SGS Guelph Lab. Quite an accomplishment. And you can find out more about SGS to help you elevate your business by calling 1-800-952-5407. And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Wednesday. Hey, calling all Montana farmers in North Dakota, South Dakota, and northern Minnesota. The new Seed Omega-3 canola production system can help you unlock a guaranteed path to market with attractive premium opportunities, first-in-class agronomy support, and free on-farm pickup after harvest. To learn more, visit omega3canola.com. Remember, that's for farmers in Montana, in the Dakotas, and northern Minnesota. That's Omega-3 canola from New Seed. Okay, joining us right now is market analyst with agmarket.net. He is based out of North Dakota. It is Tyler Schau. Hey, Tyler, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Shaun?
And I'm doing really well. I heard it's a bit dry there in North Dakota.
It's been very dry for the last several months. I can't even off the top of my head tell you the last time we had a meaningful precipitation event. Been hot, a lot of wind. This last weekend, the winds were brutal on Saturday, 70-mile-an-hour winds, and sparked up some fires in northwest North Dakota. So, if you got a chance, say a prayer for those folks up there. They've kind of had a brutal past few days, and some tragedy has struck that area.
Is it putting some concern in the fact that we're dry here in the fall? Is it putting some concern into where we're going to sit at the beginning of 25 for that area of the Northern Plains?
For myself and for a lot of my customers that I talk to, yes. And it's a pretty wide swath of the state of North Dakota. A lot of times we'll get, pockets that get dry. This is one of those scenarios where we really haven't seen meaningful rain for really I won't say the entire state. Eastern and southeastern has done all right, but for the western 2/3 of the state of North Dakota, it has been dry most of summer. All of fall so far. And, history tells us that major droughts develop in the fall and persist through the spring, or the winter and spring. So, it's got some of us nervous, myself included. It would sure be good that, this thing would change and we'd get I don't wish this on the ranchers, but, a lot of snow, maybe a cold winter that might kind of help to change the outlook as we move forward. But as of right now, it's got shades of fall of 2020 was very similar to this. Really dry, late summer, dry through the fall, very little snow through the winter, and then what happened in 2021, the spring and summer. So we could sure wouldn't mind seeing that pattern change.
Western Canadian farmers remember 2021 very well. Still a hangover from how dry 21 was and how poor those yields were, and it kind of impacted people's marketing going forward. A lot of people tied to production contracts with grain companies they thought they were maybe a certain percent sold, found out they were like 125% sold, right? Really short on some of the production. And it definitely created some penalties and some problems for a lot of growers in the prairies. Okay, let's talk about the markets. And it's interesting to me what's been going on here. I think from a farmer sentiment standpoint, there is maybe a little bit of it feels like there's some short covering. It feels like would you describe right now as we've stabilized a little bit? Is that fair?
I think that's a very fair comment. We just had that awful run in the markets really from the end of May all the way till mid-August. A 2.5, 3 month stretch where it didn't really matter what grain you want to talk about. Markets just kind of eroded, and really felt like that was the point when a lot of producers, I don't want to say threw in the towel, maybe came to the realization that we weren't in the same market that we were in 22 and 23. And they kind of changed their mindset, and they changed their mindset, and then we get kind of a non-seasonal rally that starts in mid-August. We usually don't see that rally in the grains anyhow until we get to about this time of the year. Mid-October is when we kind of see that seasonal trend in soybeans, where we kind of start to see that spike. We saw that about 2 months earlier. Kind of run into some resistance on charts. Also, the news hasn't been exactly fundamentally friendly to any of the grain prices, especially corn and beans here over the last few weeks. But we're just kind of chugging along. Market doesn't want to seem to just go blasting lower like a lot of people had feared. But in the same time, it's not just skyrocketing higher like a lot of folks had hoped it would.
Yeah, we got May 25 corn at just under 450 as we're having this discussion. That seems a lot better than the 350 some people were talking about.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good reminder. September corn went off at about 365. At one point had touched 350. And that's what a lot of us were talking about. When we're in a carry market like this, your deferred contracts will typically go down to where the previous contract went off the board at. And so we watched September corn really tank, and kind of had the assumption we'd see December corn do the same. It does feel like, that was the turning point where the old crop did get moved. Finally, the producers maybe realized there was a large old crop out there. They'd been sitting on a lot. There was a lot in storage. I always say this somewhat jokingly, somewhat truthfully. Never underestimate the ability of the Western North Dakota farmer to store all of last year's crop. And it felt like that was going on all around the Corn Belt. But they kind of turned it all over there in around that time, and we kind of felt like maybe there'd be more pressure, and the market kind of pulled a 180 on us and drifted higher, which is it's always a good thing. But you got to be positioned for it, and that's the kind of things you got to be paying attention to.
So having said all that, do you think it shifts the strategy at all for growers, or are we still in a sell? What I've been, the most frequent strategy I've been hearing from analysts is, be prepared to take some risk off the table, sell into some of those rallies. Is it still that kind of a market?
That is our approach. We're selling into the rallies. Our company is fairly heavily sold on new crop corn, or corn that we're harvesting right now. We've been that way. Yeah, we've been that way for quite a while. We're focusing now on what do we do with the 25 crop to get some risk mitigation in place, whether that's corn, beans, wheat. When you're in the Northern Plains, marketing next year's wheat's always difficult. We just talked about the issues producers got into in 2021. And this isn't bashing any market or anything. The Minneapolis spring wheat options are difficult and illiquid to purchase, especially when you're trying to go out to the new crop year. So it's there's some risk there if you're going to look at doing anything on new crop in that fashion. But we're using these rallies, that we received over the last few weeks to increase our hedge position or protected position, both on old crop. And then, just because we say as a company, we're, 100% sold, does not mean that every one of our customers is. Those are recommendations we make. We have a lot of customers that are way behind. So we've been trying to use those rallies to make sales into, to roll our put options up, increase our coverage, and, hopefully if we're rolling puts up, the market keeps going higher and we left a little bit on the table. But we strongly encourage having, put orders in. These little drawbacks we've got here. Take a look at what you've got in inventory. Take a look, at where prices are. Even if it's a wish order, throw them out there. Have them working either at the elevator with your broker, some way, shape, or form. So if we do get some type of geopolitical event that sends prices higher, it happens rather than it hits and then we think it's going to go even higher.
Yeah, I was talking to a grower last week who said, I'm 100% sold on my 24 crop on corn. And I wanted to, he wanted that, risk off the table. But he said, you know what? I'm going to participate if it goes higher. He actually bought this is not, now he's not hedging. Now he's, now he's trading, but he bought some calls. Mm-hmm. So if it does go higher, he still feels like he participated. So there's lots of ways to do this. How do we define a rally? I've had customers ask that. Okay, you're telling me to sell the rallies. How do I define a rally? How do I know when I should be selling? What does that mean to you?
So I will rely on what I first learned when I got into this business. I taught for a lot of years and then started in the commodity business in 2020. And one of the first lessons I learned was this is based on 25 years of just looking at charts, 30 cents in corn, 40 on wheat, 60 on beans. And so that's kind of all I've used that. It works. Just because I say that's what it is does not mean that's what a rally is. That's just what I've found probably more important in this industry or this business than anything, and in producers marketing, is to have a set of rules and follow those rules. Does that make sense?
It does.
Hey, if we rally 30 cents, in corn, I'm going to reward that. If we rally 40 cents on wheat, I'm going to figure out a way I'm either going to sell some, doesn't have to be all, doesn't have to be a lot. I'm going to make a sale. I'm going to buy put options. I'm going to do something on that 40-cent move to reward it. And so I don't know that, that's necessarily got to be a rule that everyone follows. It's one we try to follow, or I do with my customers, and it seems to work. If you don't have that type of system or rule, you end up just shooting from the hip all the time. And that can end up in your favor, but a lot of times it does not.
Yeah. If you have to be a goldfish, but you also have to, yes, that's true, right? Short memory on bad decisions. It's farming or marketing, whatever. But you also need to remember those rules that you said, hey, when this happens, I'm going to do this. And whether you're going to tell your spouse about those rules so they can kick you in the shin, or your farming partner, your kids, your dad, whatever. Just, you need to hold yourself accountable somehow, some way to what some of those rules were, so that you don't get yourself in trouble. We're going to be back with more of my conversation with Tyler Schau of agmarket.net. But first, let me tell you about CDC Envy CWRS. With impressive yields, early maturity, outstanding standability, and a robust disease package, with CDC Envy, your wheat crop will be the talk of the town. Learn more at allianceseed.com, or you can call 1-877-279-2890. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
Get ready for tillage season with the high-speed disc from Brandt. Cut and size residue, create ideal seed beds, and level ruts faster than any other tillage machine. It's a better field finish and fewer passes, so you can stay on schedule no matter what fall throws at you. And right now, you can get yours with a $12,000 rebate. There's never been a better time to bring your operation up to speed. Visit Brandt.ca for details.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup to weed control, field trial results, and the latest yield strategies. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from realagriculture.com, or as a podcast in your favorite podcast app. Check out the latest Corn School episode today.
Nitrogen fertilizer is your farm's number one expense. Farmers are working together through Genesis Fertilizers to solve the problem of high prices and security of supply by planning a state-of-the-art nitrogen plant. Security and earnings through ownership is the solution. Visit Genesis today at genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. Let's continue my conversation with Tyler Schau of agmarket.net. What's your thought on canola? We've got obviously a lot of canola in Western Canada, popular crop in North Dakota. It's had, it's above 610. It's around 613 at the time of us having this conversation. What's going on?
It's been a wild market with the China, Canada, geopolitics that have been going on with tariffs. We came out here. It seems like just a few weeks ago, but, looking at charts, it was well over a month ago now where China came in and put a fairly sizable tariff against canola oil, or Canadian canola oil. The market's pretty well forgotten about that over the last several weeks. It does feel like, the dryness has, especially here in the late season, has impacted yields. Talking to producers in North Dakota, at one point they were feeling like they were going to have a pretty good crop. They did have a decent crop here. I've heard rumblings that maybe there was some production issues in Canada. I don't work with a lot of Canadian producers, so I don't hear that, directly. But from what I've read, there's been some production issues which have kind of pushed supply.
Tyler, less yield than people thought there was going to be.
Yeah, kind of the same thing here. Big high hopes, and then maybe it was just a little bit disappointing for where their hopes were at.
100%.
I think the story in canola moving forward, or in my opinion, this is for both soybean oil and canola, is what if the U.S. government steps in and does anything on the used cooking oil that's been imported into the U.S. and used in the renewable diesel program, especially in California. If we can get some, I guess the best way to put it, some spine, where we say, hey, we're not going to allow for that anymore. We're going to cut that flow off. I do think that boosts demand for both soybean oil and canola oil domestically in North America and will help considerably. But that's a hope strategy, and I've found it's maybe not always the best strategy for marketing, hoping that something comes out of Washington in your favor. We can't even get a farm bill passed. So,
well, that is true. Yeah. If I always find if you look at your wish list of things to happen, and any of that wish list involves Congress coming through on something, I'm just saying. Saying.
Yeah.
You may want a different list.
Yeah, I would agree. But we were prepared, same thing for canola to, when we blasted down below 550 on the board on November canola.
Yeah.
It was kind of we were a little bit nervous. Now, we did have a lot of producers use put options. Don't forget there are put options against canola. The Canadian grower probably works a little bit better because it's in Canadian currency and it's in metric tons. And U.S., we have no idea what a metric ton looks like. And so there's a lot of math and a lot of scratching of heads, but we can figure out how to, put puts on that can somewhat protect, what your cost of production or break even is. And so we did have a lot of producers that were utilizing those tools. Yeah. And then, we did catch that little rally there in late August that allowed a lot of our producers to get some cash sales on, and it's one of those weird crops where some of my producers have no problem storing it, some of them hate it, and they want to move it right off the combine and get it gone because they've had some bad experiences storing canola through the winter. So it's a little bit of everything, seems like.
Yeah, and if you referenced that November 24 chart where we did dip below 550, and if it was just May where we were at 700.
Yeah,
we got $150 a ton movement. Like we're all over the place on canola. I haven't looked at some of the VIX ratios, the volatility ratios when it comes to the different commodities, but canola's got to be kind of near at the top. I probably excluding cocoa and things like that.
Yeah.
But for the main base commodities that we're growing in this region, kind of feels like it's the most volatile, isn't it?
It has been very volatile. A lot of that has to do with the managed money. Remember, they just kind of like they were in all the other grains, they were massively short. And really push that maybe further, I believe, and I don't have the chart in front of me. At one point, they were a record short in canola at some point this summer, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And then we saw a lot in all those grains, saw a lot of buying back of the managed money. And, that love them, hate them, right, wrong, indifferent, they're in the marketplace. You got to figure out how to use them to your advantage, and one of those advantages is, hey, when you come off a 550 on November canola just on September 16th, and we hit 630 just 2.5 weeks later on October 7th. That's a spot where we've got to reward them for buying back those positions.
You referenced the UCO, the used cooking oil out of China. Sometimes the mixture of palm oil. It's impacted the market. How have you seen the abundance of the UCO coming into the U.S.? How has that impacted canola and soybean trade? How is that working its way back to the grower? What's happening?
Well, I think the main impact was, I think the best way I can describe this in simple terms for my simple brain to understand is you had a lot of expectations in 2022 and into 2023 as these renewable diesel plants are being announced, as they're being constructed, and as they're hitting the finish line and opening up. And there was this expectation that, they were going to gobble up a lot of beans, a lot of canola, and all of that oil was going to go directly into the renewable diesel plants. And so we basically primed the pump really, as far as what we were expecting for demand, and maybe got a little ahead of the skis, because all of a sudden here's this flood of used cooking oil coming in from other countries that we weren't really planning on. Right.
Yeah.
And I get to work with some pretty smart individuals through John Stewart and Associates, and get to go to some conferences where that was the big talk, was just the demand driver that these renewable diesel plants were going to be for domestically grown oil seeds. And all of a sudden it was just like the rug got pulled out from under us when the rubber met the road, and we're like, we're not using as much as we thought we would at this point. And when you dig deeper, you find out that they're not, because the blender or the diesel plant is they're getting that subsidy, even though they're not purchasing domestically grown oils.
Yeah.
They're getting it from somewhere else. And, the idea is, China's sending over palm oil with a French fry in it. It's not used cooking oil. They're just saying it is, and they're harvesting that subsidy, and everyone wins but the U.S. and Canadian farmer.
Yeah, we've been talking here on RealAg Radio a lot about 45Z and what that could potentially, when we're still waiting for some of those final details from the Department of Treasury, and that, domestic feedstock that some members of Congress on both sides, on the Senate and the congressional side, have been pushing, does that allow for Canadian canola or doesn't it? And how do you define domestic? That there's more to come on that front. Hey, to wrap up, before I let you go, and I appreciate your time here, what's the tough for the farmer right now as we sit? What's the toughest decision?
I think the toughest decision is going to be on what do I start, how do I start legging into some protection for next year's crop? You kind of talked about how canola was, not too long ago at $700 a ton. You look out to November of 25 and canola's sitting at 640. You look at September spring wheat 2025 at 692, almost $7 a bushel on that price. So, it's real easy to look back 2 years ago and be disappointed by those prices. But if we go back to 2020, and I would have said, hey, you could sell next year's spring wheat at $7. I'd have had a line of farmers with trucks already ready to go, sitting out in my driveway. So I think it's really important to don't lose sight of the forest because of the trees. Do I love $7 wheat? I'd rather sell $10 wheat. But if we take a step back, $7 wheat's not a bad price. You shouldn't maybe shake too much of a stick at it. And you can see that in all the crops, in my opinion. Some relatively decent prices given where we've been the last 10 years, maybe not necessarily the last 2 years, but something to pay attention to.
Hey, Tyler, really appreciate you joining us here today. That's awesome stuff, and appreciate the insight.
You bet. Take care, Shaun.
Coming up next on RealAg Radio, we got a product spotlight with Canterra Seeds, some exciting new things, new hybrid for canola growers in Western Canada. And then we're going to chat with Tyler McCann of CAPI about carbon border adjustments. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Calling all Montana, Dakotas, and northern Minnesota growers. Are you looking for a profitable addition to your farm that can deliver value beyond yield? The new Seed Omega-3 Canola Production System can help you unlock a guaranteed path to market with attractive premium opportunities and an active God clause. Contracts include first-in-class agronomy support and free on-farm pickup after harvest. Contracts are available now. Commit early to maximize your opportunity. To learn more, visit omega3canola.com.
What were the issues in your fields this year? Did you do a soil sample? What is your soil sample telling you about some of the nutrient issues that you might be having going into next year? What herbicides did you use? What residues you might be concerned about? What weed issues did you have? What crop residues did you have? How well do you know your fields?
Get the answers to all the questions you have about your pulse crop at the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight with Canterra Seeds. We are joined right now by Canterra's canola product manager. It is Courtney Welch. Courtney, it's great to chat with you.
Good morning, Shaun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to chat with you. So we're going to talk about Canterra's CS 3300 TF. It's a new canola hybrid for 2025. Share some details, some characteristics of this new hybrid.
Yeah, you bet. So CS 3300 TF is the newest addition to the TrueFlex portion of our canola portfolio. It does have kind of all the bells and whistles on it. So it has first generation club root resistance, which will cover most farmers across Western Canada. It's multigenic blackleg, so resistance groups A and E2, has our trait, pod protect trait in it. And it's early maturity, so it's going to be a fit for most farmers across the prairies.
Yeah, and for growers that have been growing Canterra hybrids in the past, or maybe considering it for the first time this year, or for the upcoming season, I should say, this is a nice improvement in the portfolio. This variety, adding it to the lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. To have both that early maturity flexibility to add on your farm, whether you want to get in and harvest a little earlier or you need that early maturity for your region specifically, it's a great fit, and it's definitely a yield bump. So we have this in numerous trials across the prairies right now. I have 20 trials in hand right now that we verified. And of those 20 trials that I have in, it's placing in the top 80% of the time. So super solid performer. I've been really impressed with the performance on this one and the consistency of it. I actually had the opportunity to chat with a farmer yesterday about his experience with CS 3300, and he said it was the best performer on his farm. It was like the Canterra that he was used to, but everything was just a little bit better. So better yield, better pod shatter resistance, better harvestability. He was really, really happy with it.
That's great to hear. Okay, so you mentioned Pod Protect. What is Pod Protect, and is this an attribute that's going to be in many of the new future hybrids coming to the market through Canterra?
Yeah, absolutely. So Pod Protect is the label that we're going to put onto products that have enhanced pod shatter tolerance protection in the field. We know this is something that farmers have been asking for. Obviously, it's a big demand in the marketplace to have that enhanced pod shatter protection in the field, just so it lends a little bit more flexibility come harvest time, right? You don't need to get it at as quickly. If you don't want to swath it, you don't have to. You can get in delay swath if that's your preference. So anything that has that pod shatter trait and is rated as a 7 or higher on that canola council shatter scale is going to be given that Pod Protect label within our portfolio, and absolutely is a focus for our portfolio moving forward.
And important here to emphasize as well, again, or re-emphasize that Canterra 3300, CS 3300 fits a pretty wide geography. There's not a lot of pockets where it doesn't fit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had it in testing program from Manitoba all the way up to Peace River, and it's performing consistently across that entire geography. The only issue with it that I would say, just a watch out is for that Edmonton area. If you have that second gen club root on your field, maybe this isn't exactly the right fit, but for everybody else, so the majority of the prairies, it's going to be an excellent fit for your farm.
Well, here's the beauty. If you are in that Edmonton area, in that club root region, Canterra also has some...
We also have products for that, yeah. So CS 2600 CRT has been a really solid choice for a number of years for Canterra with that enhanced club root protection, you bet.
Okay, before we wrap up, tell us a little bit about Canterra Seeds and some of the background and the story for those that aren't familiar with it.
Yeah, so Canterra Seeds is a local Western seed company. So it's founded by farmers, and we are just that. So I mentioned seed company. So we're really focused on providing excellent seed to farmers in Western Canada. So super broad portfolio that we have here. We have anything from wheat, oats, barley, peas, lentils. I could sit here all day and mention all the different varieties that we have. And of course, canola, which is my main focus here.
What's the Free Seed Friday program?
Yeah, so Free Seed Friday, we weren't sure if we were bringing it back, but there's been lots of demand for it to come back this year. So for 2025, we have a couple of draws. So if you get your order in before October 18th, we're doing a draw for 16 free bags for a farmer in each of the 3 prairie provinces. So that'll be Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, BC. There will be a draw for 16 free bags of seed.
Nice. I like free.
Yeah, free's great. Can't go wrong with that for sure.
Now, we've been talking here about CS 3300 TF, and there is that hybrid and others in the portfolio, as you mentioned. If somebody wants more information on these hybrids, where do they go?
Yeah, so we are constantly updating those online. So you can just head over to canterra.com, click on our performance page, and you can find local results that will be more relevant to your farm and to your area. So there's lots up there already for 2024 and previous years if you want to check back over the past few years. And I'm always on there updating as we get more trial results in.
Yeah, also talk to your local Canterra rep and your local ag retailer.
Yeah, you bet.
Courtney, thanks a lot for joining us here today.
Thanks, Shaun.
Okay, that is Courtney Welch. She is the canola product manager with Canterra Seeds. And we'll be right back here on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, right after this.
Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Glide delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at OptimumGlide.ca.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing the Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
And welcome back to Real Ag Radio. Hey, for agronomically effective dual UAN inhibition, the smart answer is Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how its 2 active ingredients protect UAN from 3 forms of nitrogen loss, all you have to do is visit kochag.ca. Okay, let's get into some policy issues here. We've talked markets. Now we're going to dive into some policy. We've got Tyler McCann. He is managing director at CAPI, based out of Ottawa. Hey, Tyler, how are you doing?
I'm great, Shaun. Great to see you again. It was great to have you in Ottawa last week with us.
Yeah, it was a really, I had a great time, to be honest with you. It was 2 days dedicated to sustainability. That's a lot of sustainability talk. But I think a lot was accomplished. The crowd seemed to really enjoy themselves, covered it from a lot of different angles. And I think truthfully so, looked at sustainability more from, it's not just about the environment. There's a lot of things that are, get wrapped around sustainability, including economic sustainability, productivity, and all those kinds of things were definitely a part of the discussion last week.
Yeah, and a good recognition, I think, that this isn't just about opportunities, right? This is about challenges. This is about threats. And there is a need to think differently about that. And so I think that there's a lot of questions around, what does the sustainability agenda look like over the next 5 years? I think, a big question around what does it mean in the government context a year from now? I'm not sure we have a lot of answers on that yet. But, as much as people may get tired about the sustainability discussion, we also don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we need a better sense as to what does Canadian agriculture really need to succeed in that space.
Yeah, and you can, we're going to post at RealAgriculture.com as a part of the Ag Policy Connection podcast. We've got the panel that I moderated on stage. We had a great group of people talking about should sustainability be the number one strategic priority for Canada. We've got a wrap-up panel that you participated in, which was really entertaining after day one. And we'll have a wrap-up panel for day 2 as well. They'll all go through that Ag Policy Connection podcast and be posted at RealAgriculture.com. So looking forward to that. Okay. Last week also, there was not only the meeting that was going on, you also presented, I believe, to the House Ag Committee. Is that correct? Is the committee you were in front of? Talking about carbon border adjustments. We've talked about this on Real Ag Radio and at RealAgriculture.com quite frequently over the past, 2-3 years. It's something that's still very much in the ether of what could it look like, specifically to agriculture. When asked at committee, will this impact agriculture? What was your response?
I don't think it will impact your typical ag commodities in the foreseeable future. I don't think it will impact your typical ag commodities in the midterm. It will impact fertilizer. The Canadian fertilizer industry is an industry that needs to be thinking about this, but the border carbon adjustment is going to be really focused on those emissions intense, trade exposed sectors like cement and steel manufacturing, like fertilizer. I think at the end of the day, agriculture is just far too complicated for anybody to figure out how do you actually do this in a meaningful way that creates a level playing field for carbon around the world. So I think that there's a lot more pressing issues. One of the things that I said to the committee, and I think that they've heard from others, is there's a lot of other things going on in the world. I pointed to the EU deforestation regulations that are a challenge. We have our own domestic competitiveness issues that need to be addressed, and that should probably get more attention than the border carbon adjustment. It is worth noting, I think that the committee was expecting this to be more of an issue. Some of what I heard was the government members on the committee trying to explain why they're doing this, that this isn't something that they're exploring, that this isn't something that Canada is looking to get out in front on. But I think that there's a lot of skepticism about what drives this and why they're talking about it.
Just remind everybody, carbon border adjustments, the idea is you apply a tariff on incoming goods that don't necessarily meet the same emission standards domestically, or they don't meet the same emission standards internationally where the product was produced as we have in terms of domestic production, or some of our standards. It's meant to be a bit of an equalization of environmental policies around the world. It makes, to make sense of it, China, lower bars in terms of environmental considerations than we would have here in Canada. This would even the playing field from a price perspective. Now, let's just use fertilizer example. Doesn't it work itself back to costing the farmer more? For example, we found out during the Russia invasion of Ukraine, all of a sudden we had a tariff on fertilizer coming out of Russia. Okay. In fact, it's still there. And the justification was, well, we can't support Russia. In this case, we would have a carbon border adjustment on fertilizer coming out of Russia. That raises the price of fertilizer for Eastern Canadian farmers. Does it not? How does it not impact farmers?
It does, but it's not the border carbon adjustment that's making it more expensive. It's more expensive because we have a domestic price on carbon, right? So the premise is not that Canada is doing nothing and it's just the Russian fertilizer that's paying more. The idea is because Canadian fertilizer, because we're already paying a domestic carbon price on fertilizer, that the imported fertilizer should be paid on that too. So it's creating the level playing field, but it's a level playing field to arguably a higher Canadian price because our domestic policies are there, right? It is about how do you level that off? In theory, the flip side is there should also be a rebate on the domestic price for Canadian exports if it's going into another market. I don't think that's likely, but the idea is that it's making sure that those imported products are as expensive and face the same price pressures as the domestic ones.
What happens when we have a change in government, which, obviously we have an election to hold here at some point in 2025 next year. The polls are looking like the Conservatives are going to form the next government. So let's just assume the polls are correct and that's what happens. They're talking about axing the tax, getting rid of that price on pollution, at least maybe not in the industrial sense, but for the consumer for sure. What does that do to carbon border adjustments and the use of that strategy?
In theory, if we don't have a domestic price, there's no reason whatsoever to have a border carbon adjustment. It is it's about creating that level playing field. And so there's a bit of a talk in a situation like the United States where they're not going to have a price on carbon. Could you take all of the different things that they're doing domestically, do some very kind of interesting creative math and figure out what the equivalent price would be at a border? Maybe we could get into a world like that in Canada, but I think it just speaks to the complexity of this, that it's not going to happen if you don't have a domestic price. And again, if you look around the world at these changes, it's not just Canadian elections. We've had this year a European set of elections. We've got a new commission on board. That commission is backing off on some of their environmental policies. European farmers are not subject to their emission trading system, which sets their price on carbon. It doesn't look like they will be. And so it just doesn't seem likely that we're going to have domestic prices on carbon around the world that need to be leveled out through a border carbon adjustment.
Aren't you worried at all about the scenario of this being used as a trade weapon? Whether you have a domestic price on pollution or not. The U.S. saying, hey, we actually don't like the amount of this product that's coming into the country. You know what? We've looked at it. Your environmental standards aren't very good. More to come on what those details are. We don't like it, though. And we're going to apply a carbon border adjustment, which is essentially just another tariff that's applied to goods that we're trying to keep out of the country.
I'm a lot more worried about country of origin labeling in the U.S. I'm a lot more worried about EU deforestation regulations. I'm a lot more worried about the general breakdown in the rules-based trading system around the world. And I think that we need to spend a lot more time thinking about a lot more of those issues that are pressing issues today and aren't getting the attention that they deserve today. And less time worried about a theoretical border carbon adjustment that's, again, I don't think it's likely going to be an issue. If we can actually get our house in order and have a more thoughtful approach to the trade barriers that are impacting Canadian agriculture today, we can figure that out first. Then let's figure out what we're going to do about an eventual border carbon adjustment. But I think we're losing sight of the issues that are right in front of us on the trade agenda.
Okay, well, we'll mark it down. I'm concerned. You're not. It's okay. We agree to disagree. This is good stuff. It's going to be interesting to see how it is used in the future. But like you said, many people that talked about this at committee all were more saying, I don't really, that was the clear message that the committee heard, correct?
Yeah, and I think that's been pretty consistent. And again, I think a lot of people talk about, if it's about creating a level playing field, another way to create a level playing field is reduce the burden on Canadian farmers. And I think that was a message that came through loud and clear too. Like, let's not put ourselves at a disadvantage through carbon price or other regulations.
You before we wrap up here, you've been doing quite a bit of work right now when it comes to land use at CAPI. Why is this such an interesting area?
A lot of what we try and do to drive our agenda is to think about where are there gaps that we can fill and where can we add value. Land use is I think an issue that is related to a lot of different issues. We talked about EU deforestation. Land use is an issue in that context. We hear a lot about urban expansion. We hear a lot about the need for conservation payments, and kind of our premise is we need to do a better job bringing the different people that are working on these issues together. We need to come up with some creative solutions. We see things like ALICE, which is a great program across the country, taking different approaches to this, where it's not just about carbon, it's about water and biodiversity. And I think we're going to see the future of conservation payments, the future of the environmental side of the sustainability agenda need more thoughtful approaches to land use to really try and tackle carbon, to biodiversity, all of these issues at the same time. And so what we want to do is bring more people together to say, how do we put all of these puzzle pieces together?
Hey, Tyler, great stuff. Really appreciate it. It's great to chat with you. Not on the you're always on the issues panel on Fridays on a frequent basis, but it's great to have you on midweek as well.
Great. Appreciate the opportunity, Shaun. Thank you.
Awesome stuff. That is Tyler McCann. He is managing director at CAPI, based out of Ottawa. Hey, want to mention Pioneer brand canola seed with Optimum Gly. It's the highest yielding glyphosate-tolerant trait on the market. What's next in canola happens right here. All you have to do is go to pioneer.com/Canada to find out more. If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or of course you can call that RealAg feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and of course we will chat again tomorrow. Cheers everybody.